we think he's done enough today, RFK Jr.?
I think he has. I think that there are a lot of people who view him as a breath of fresh air. He's someone who said that he struggled with a heroin addiction. Those are the types of things that you want someone who understands the plight of all Americans, not just certain Americans.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has just finished in the Senate with his confirmation hearing. He's been put under scrutiny for his wide range of views on healthcare. Of course, he's Donald Trump's pick for health secretary. He received this unfriendly introduction from Democratic Senator Ron Wyden.
He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power.
The hearing was frequently interrupted by heckling, and Kennedy was pushed on questions around his skepticism of vaccines, as well as having a fiery exchange over universal credits.
So that Americans can continue to afford health care?
Congress has to make its own decisions about that. My instructions from President
Chairman,
Trump
you're saying I'm running out of time, but I'm having a lot of trouble getting the witness to answer yes or no to a yes or no question.
OK, well, that was the confirmation hearing of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And in the last hour, elsewhere, the White House press secretary has disputed that news that the White House Office of Management and Budget has rescinded Donald Trump's order that a pause be put on federal grants and loans. So in other words, that is still a question, according to the White House press secretary. The news coming one day after federal judges temporarily halted the funding pause. We'll get to the bottom of it, or we'll try to anyway, with Amanda Makki, who's a Republican strategist and former Trump attorney. Good evening, Amanda.
Good evening.
Let's talk about the RFK Jr. confirmation hearing for Health Secretary today, first of all. Pretty spicy in parts. It was interrupted, wasn't it, several times by heckling. There was shouting from protesters there as well. But he's defended his comments on vaccines. He's actually told the hearing that he's pro-vaccine.
Right. So having worked in the United States Senate for about a decade, this is very common. So nothing to do in particular with this nominee. Heckling is a part of the First Amendment process. And of course, they're moved out as soon as they become disruptive. But that aside, vaccines were a huge part of this. Although I wish they had talked more about chronic disease, which plagues our nation and has gotten worse over the decades. It didn't seem like a lot of members of Congress really focused on that, but rather on the vaccine issue. And RFK Jr. has taken different sides on this, but he has come down on the side that he does support vaccines, for example, for polio, measles, mumps, rubella, and others. So he has said that he wants to make sure the science is right, and that there are a lot of parents who are concerned about the drastic increase in the number of vaccinations, for example, from when I was taking vaccines as a child to the current, and why is it necessary?
Yeah, he has been praised for his opposition to ultra-processed food, but he also, of course, has a very colourful private life as well. Lots of allegations, lots of contentious points. Running for president as a Democrat in 2023, that tweet about chemtrails, the dead bear, the falconry. He is a colourful character as well. It does go to a vote, we know that. Do we think he's done enough today, RFK Jr.?
I think he has. I think that there are a lot of people who view him as a breath of fresh air. He's someone who said that he struggled with a heroin addiction. Those are the types of things that you want someone who understands the plight of all Americans, not just certain Americans. And he has made making America healthy again his slogan, along with President Trump. And that's something that I think a lot of Americans want to know. Why is it that certain chemicals are banned in foods in Europe, but are allowed in foods in the United States? The sugar industry is another one that is very powerful in the United States. And you really want people who can be objective, people who are going to make the best decisions for the American people and for the health of the American people, because that is something that lawmakers across the board, Democrats and Republicans, And Americans are concerned about what are Americans eating that are making us one of the unhealthiest developed nations in the world.
Okay. This evening, there's some toing and froing going on. So the White House Office of Management and Budget rescinded its memo regarding the pause in federal grants and loans. So this was an instruction. It was temporarily halted by a federal judge. And then they said that they were rescinding it. But since then, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has said that that's not necessarily the case. What is going on here? The pause in federal grants and loans.
Well, she said that the memo has been rescinded, but the policy hasn't been rescinded. So in other words, they're going to continue to look for and find ways that federal programs need to be absolved of certain policies that this administration, that was voted for by a wide margin, that this administration does not agree with, is not aligned with their policy arguments and their policy rationale. And so this is very much within the purview of any administration to do. And so certainly she's going to be pushing that they're going to continue to go through with a fine-tooth comb the different policies, for example, DEI, the one we've heard about the most, that they can come through and get out of federal programs. Now, overnight, this has caused a lot of fear and consternation, some unwarranted, about what happens with the Medicaid program, and people aren't going to be able to get their Social Security checks. And I think that Caroline Leavitt, the new press secretary for President Trump, has made it very clear that none of those programs are going to be affected. But they are going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and look at policies they don't agree with and take them out of these federal programs.
Okay, all right. So still paused at the moment, halted the policy of pausing federal grants and loans, digging into those. That is still up for question at the moment, I think, is probably the most accurate, casual way to put it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has just signed his administration's first law. What is it, Amanda?
So the Laken-Riley Act is something that got broad bipartisan support in Congress. And in 9 days of being in office, the president already has a bill to sign into law, which is incredible in one aspect, because that's very lightning speed. The joke in the United States is, you know, if something takes too long, you say it takes an act of Congress to get it done because it takes so long. But this happened very swiftly. And that speaks to the importance of not only what President Trump campaigned on in a very major way, immigration, border security, but also to a major tragedy that occurred to a nursing student in Georgia who was killed by an illegal. And so basically the law makes it easier to deport people, to detain, deport, and potentially get them out of the country even before a conviction happens. It also makes state attorney generals have the ability to go after the federal government by a lawsuit for programs, for agendas, for any kind of rules and laws that make it harder for them to implement the Laken-Riley Act.
Amanda Makki, great to hear from you. Thank you. Republican strategist and former Trump attorney. Thanks for being with us.